We're gonna give them a vision of the world the way it really is.
Hi, my name's Ken LaCorte. I'm here with John Moody, and we are here to discuss Loudest Voice, Showtime's episode number 4, take on Fox News on Roger Ailes. And John, what do you think? This one...
This one went right down the rabbit hole.
It did.
They gave up trying to find out what actually happened and explain it to people, and they made up their own version, and they made it as grim and as salacious as they possibly could. Congrats, Showtime, you're in the porn business now, and good luck.
Right. So the episode opens up with Roger getting a blowjob from one of his assistants. I don't know how you do dialogue on that. I mean, I know didn't cooperate. but he's not around. I know she didn't talk to people on things, and she's got some issues that we'll talk about a little bit down the road. I felt that the show in episode 1, I wasn't all that crazy critical of it. And now I think that this is some weird dystopian version. This is what liberals think happened within Fox News. And you can watch any of the earlier segments where we were talking about what was real and what was wrong and what was exaggerated in the earlier. This to me had almost no bearing in reality. I got an email from a woman who said, Ken, if a third of this was true, how could you continue to work at that company? It was like, because a third of this isn't true. This is now something I don't recognize at all. I don't recognize this Roger Ailes character. I mean, the facts are roughly in line with the facts of things that happen, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, Russell Crowe can put on makeup and a fat suit and pretend to be Roger Ailes, but that's not Roger Ailes. The guy that we worked for was far more sophisticated in his approach. He was prone to rant and rave in meetings with his trusted executives. But he never, ever went so far as to, crash his fist down on a table and say, I want this on right now, you go do this. It's just not how he worked.
Right. These, again, I'll say it again, because this is like if you hate Fox News and you hate their politics and you understand that they were ruining America and that company, this is what you think went on inside of there. And I can only think it's because everybody who wrote and produced and has everything to do with this probably wasn't a big Fox fan.
I can't imagine that they brought anybody in to even consult who had an inside version of what happened at Fox.
Actually what happened, with the exception of the people who are going to look great.
And we know who that is.
Right. One of the things that bothered me the most, because I was familiar with it, was their telling of Acorn. Mm-hmm. So for those who don't remember the Acorn story, Acorn was a group of community organizations around the country, paid for by U.S. government funds, that were ostensibly in poor neighborhoods to help them with all sorts of things, and I think they did. But they also turned into political engines and Obama get out the vote campaigns. Right. And James O'Keefe, some guy somewhere between an activist and a journalist, goes in with a gal and basically tells them that he wants to start up a whorehouse with her being one of his. I don't know if she was going to be the madam or one of the one of the girls. Yeah. He talked about it, and he would bring in that some of these gals are coming from Asia and they might be underage, and Acorn people in a handful of their offices throughout the country were completely helpful to him, saying, well, you could count them as dependents, not as prostitutes. And it was like, and that kind of helped disintegrate Acorn, or at least disintegrate them, and then they had to change their names.
They were defunded.
And yeah. I think that a lot of them have come back in different ilks on things. He was accused by supporters of Acorn, he being O'Keefe, of maliciously editing things. Mm-hmm. The one big thing that there was a mistake on is he had an intro of him walking like he was dressed like Pimp Daddy, and the girl was wearing the little tight shorts and a tube top. When they went into these Acorn places, they looked like normal human beings. They didn't look like pimp and whore caricatures. And you saw the long tapes, and you said some of his edits were a little iffy, but
shady,
overall, what did you think of that? Because you saw hours of that footage.
O'Keefe was, and I guess still is, right on the edge of reliability. Right. His points, when he gets someone to say something on camera, he's very credible, and he's sharp, and he knows what he wants to get. His problem is he edits his footage in such a sharp, malicious manner that it destroys the credibility that he has already gotten by getting people to talk to him.
And when you saw the whole footage of that, how off was that? In other words, well, were the gals out there helping them start a whorehouse? And
yeah,
they,
sure.
Okay. So the basis of it was
they were offering strategy.
Because I saw longer footage of it too,
yeah.
and it was like it was horrific. The concept that a government-funded agency was doing this.
Right, and he got them to say what he expected them to say because I guess he'd done some homework on this. He didn't walk in cold, and. Had the Acorn footage been treated seriously by the mainstream media, it would have been a huge problem for Barack Obama.
Right. So the supporters of Acorn say, well, he edited the footage, it was all fake, it's all this. And of course, Loudest voice literally has everybody at Fox, from Roger to, I don't know if your character was into being like, well, we know it's all fake, and we know this isn't a story, and Roger being like, I say it's a story, so go it out and let him deny it. And it was like, it was infuriating, because this was a major story in America that Fox, in my opinion, did a great job for promoting it. Glenn Beck, I won't say Glenn Beck's the most sane person on the planet, but he pushed that, and he did that a lot. And this created the exact opposite of reality, in my opinion. They just bought that this was a fake story, hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
So,
in many ways, Ken, this was one of the first seeds being planted for fake news.
Right.
And that's, of course, a term that we all use way too often now. Right. But that was the tag attached to the Acorn story. Right. This is fake news. You can't believe this, and therefore you can't believe any part of it. You can't even believe that the woman on camera saying these words was saying these words. Right. Right. And Roger had,
and nobody's had a bad edit from NBC or CNN.
No, right, exactly. Roger had a favorite phrase: "Who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes?"
Right. Right. The first two episodes of this, I had issues with. The third one, it was kind of getting into a little bizarro land. This one, I'm looking through my notes. I've got bullshit, complete bullshit. It's like it's literally like I was watching a dystopian thing.
Tell us how you really felt.
That made no sense. The music, they decided to go. Whoever invented the minor chord in Hollywood now has more money because it was, I mean, it was every time Roger would look at somebody or this or that. It
was Phantom of the Opera music.
A couple small, let's go through some of the small falsehoods that I believe. One of them was Roger's wife versus Roger's personal
executive
assistant Judy Laterza. They've been building up since the first one. In this one, Judy buys him a cake, and they've got the they've got the candles already, and somehow the wife pops into the office and at just that moment as Roger was, and she's like, Judy, we've already celebrated his birthday, and Roger kind of sheepishly walks off without blowing out his birthday candles. It's kind of like, I don't know where they're going with that.
I think
I don't buy any of that meme or any of that narrative. But
I don't either. I think what they're doing is trying to create a persona for Judy Laterza. Of temptress, of a competitor to Beth Ailes, right. etc. That's not who Judy Laterza was/is. Right. She's taken herself out of the public eye now, and that's understandable. But again, Judy was one of the most helpful, loyal, thoughtful, and reliable people in Roger's life. And to paint her as this other woman persona is,
again, I know they're going somewhere with that.
Talk about sexism. That's sexism.
Right. That's a good point. So a big part of this episode was the Ailes bought their local newspaper, which they did. Yeah. They made it more conservative, which they did. They were in kind of a lefty, happy town that they fell out of love with, I think, over the course of times because
buyer's regret.
Yeah, and a lot of it was land use issues. Mm-hmm. Roger, with the when somebody tried to do some a survey on his property, and he was there with his German Shepherd, That rang true.
I think that might have happened.
Yeah.
I think he might have actually bragged about that.
Yeah, that sounds like something that I could have seen Roger doing.
Yeah.
I remember Champ, the big German Shepherd dog. So yeah, I could imagine somebody coming on there. But look, somebody was always coming on saying your water's flowing the wrong direction. I mean, I remember he was saying that they were that when he was building his house, they said, well, for kayakers in the river, you're going to change the tree line here, and he was like, how much property taxes do kayakers in the river take? So. Some of that was true. He also did go to war with what he felt was overarching government control
The city council.
with the city council and the land use. And look, a lot of towns are now run by kind of the, environmentalism is a good thing, but you create these rules and all of a sudden they're telling you what color to paint your house. And,
I think the point they were making with regard to Richard Shea, the town supervisor or whatever he was, is that Roger was standing up for basic First Amendment rights and individuals' liberties. And, it's true. That's what he believed in. And when he saw what was going on in the town of Cold Spring, which was right next to his house and had governmental authority over it, he decided, you know what, I have a voice and I'm going to use it. And did he misuse his position? I guess it's an open question.
The one thing that they did, well, so they introduced a new hero. The first hero is going to be the PR guy, one of the more evil people that I've ever run into in my business and business career. They're going to turn him into a good guy. Now they've got a new good guy in here, a guy named Joe Lindsley. Roger did hire a young kid to come and run that newspaper. That lasted for, a year or so?
Somewhere like that,
I want to say. And then they kind of had some weird, and he had kind of almost adopted him. They'd go to church together, and all that was, I believe, very true. They had, but now he is now the conscience. He's like the journalist of Fox News. Is this kid saying, well, Roger, wouldn't it be bad if we criticize these people? Or, and he was talking about the Acorn thing, saying, but it wasn't true, Roger. And Roger was like, I don't care, young whippersnapper. If we say it, it's true. And again, complete bullshit. That character, I've met him. He was I don't know what the basis of their falling out was. But the one other scene that I thought, I just don't believe it. I wasn't there. Joe's still alive. So some of these other things, it's like, how did they know what Roger said to his wife? Because she didn't talk to him and he's gone. Where when he won like the land use decision for his house, he was like, hey, Joe, let it go. And that he basically cut a deal with those guys.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like the Roger I ever saw.
A couple of points here. Joe Lindsley was hired because of his right-wing views. I think also because of his religious faith.
Right.
And he was brought on with a certain amount of expectation that he would toe the line and, in fact, push the Ailes agenda.
Right.
He did for a while. He decided then that there were some things that he disagreed with, and his demise was very quick. Second point is, I never met him. And that underscores my point that Joe Lindsley had nothing to do with the editorial policies of Fox News.
Yeah.
He might have talked to Roger off-site in Garrison or wherever they were, but as far as I know, I know that he never attended a meeting that I attended. And, and I don't think he ever even visited Fox News except to talk about county issues where Roger lived.
Right.
He never had any input on Fox News.
But now he's the conscience of Fox
And now he's the conscience.
He's the journalist of Fox News who feels bad about
Every dark story needs a saint.
What else on this? Again, this one was so... It went so much off the rails that it's kind of hard to know where to start. I guess the other stuff is Roger's treating of the staff and what else would you want to jump in on?
Yeah, no, staff meetings with Roger were fun.
Yeah.
They could be intimidating when he was off on a rant, but for the most part, they were a display of extraordinary intelligence and a visionary style of leadership. And of course this show isn't going to portray that, but you have to understand that when you walked into a room with Roger, you knew that there was going to be some laughter, you knew there was going to be some anger, and you knew that there was going to be some leadership.
Right.
And there are a lot of networks out there now, including the same network, that could use that.
Right. So as I was watching it, actually, there's something I haven't mentioned to you. I assigned a story. I called up a reporter and said, start looking at all the political donations of the EPs and the assistant EPs on this show, because I can't imagine that there's anybody who was involved with either the acting, the writing, or the production of this company who probably ever sided with Fox's side on something. So we'll see what we come up with that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're fair and balanced, but we'll know in a week or two.
Just see if there's any registered Republicans.
Yeah, that's probably not the case either. So that's kind of all I have on this. Do you have anything else that you want to throw into that?
This is speculation on my part, and at least I'm going to be honest enough to say that. I don't know. I wasn't there. I wasn't involved in it. The treatment of Laurie Loon in this show, in this particular episode, is so stereotypical and so unnuanced that I just wonder if they had any input at all from any source that knew what was going on.
Okay, so Laurie Loon is said to have been Roger's mistress from before Fox, sometimes during, on, off again. What were the timelines? People don't know. She clearly was somebody who had some power within Fox, and Roger liked her. But there was a lot of people who Roger liked and didn't like, or who kind of had some power because they were close to him. I had that ability as well. Nothing sexual was going on.
No, you knew him. You knew him, and he trusted you.
So Laurie in this episode, they're turning into looking crazy and being heavily medicated.
Self-medicated.
Self-medicated, and the pills hitting the ground and her on the floor scooping them up. I knew her briefly from my brief time with her. She had mental issues. She was. I'm not a psychologist, but she was kind of clinically paranoid to me. I mean, I saw that within a 24-hour period of trying to help her out on some things. I never saw any drug use or anything like that. There is the notion out in the world, and we might as well just get to the sex stuff right now. There's the notion out there that all of his executives must have known that he had girlfriends or that he hit on, that he told some people. And the answer from the best that I know is I never saw any of that. I never heard any of that. And Roger wasn't fucking stupid. I mean, people like, well, Bill Shine must have known. He was he was seen by many. You were often seen as the number two. Bill Shine was often seen as the number two. And I pull people aside and I'm saying, okay, well, Roger was a careful man. He wasn't going to tell his potential successor at Fox News, who had to just call up Rupert and James and Lachlan and say, hey, Roger's banging the help. Can I have the job now? I mean, the concept that he would tell you or Bill Shine something that would basically put a knife in your hand that you could use to kill him and take over. That just wasn't the Roger Ailes I ever met. So whatever he was doing, and I think it's much less than was reported, but certainly more than I'd ever expected. None of that. I mean, maybe the inside secretaries knew, maybe there were certain people, but this whole concept of everybody knew what was going on, and Bill Shine kidnapped her and knew what. I call shenanigans on all of that.
Yeah. I've been asked a lot of times, because I was associated with Roger for a lot, and I was in an awful lot of meetings, both large and small, with him. And I always say the same thing. He wouldn't have wanted me to know something like that, not just because it was, as you say, a knife in my hand that I could have potentially used, but because it would have diminished my respect for him. And Roger craved respect from people. And therefore, if this was all going on, he sure wasn't going to tell anybody about it.
And he also advised other guys not to fool around. Do you remember what he would tell you to do?
I do.
He would say, if you're ever tempted on that,
go home and have a bowl of cereal.
Go home and have a bowl of cereal. And that was kind of the inside joke on things. And sometimes cereal and girls, it depends on the cereal.
Well, it's like a cold shower, I guess. But I mean, what we see is him in hotel rooms sipping wine and having a large red steak while after he's done his deed with an employee. Roger didn't drink. He knew that he shouldn't eat so much red meat, and I don't think he was so careless about his health that he would have been going and doing that. And he sure didn't tell people what he was doing and have them abet his
of whatever was doing.
Yeah.
Right. You know, it's an unusual position to be in for me because when some of the allegations broke, my first response was, they're lying. None of this is true. I've now heard some people with enough credibility that I'm like, you know, some of this is true. Now, I still don't believe Gretchen Carlson. I just, maybe some little parts of it. I read her entire legal complaint, which I think was eminently winnable by Fox. I know some of the lawsuits are just people pulling things out and getting lawyers on to make money and whatnot. There were a couple other things from the past when I'd worked for them well before Fox that I was like, you know, I knew that gal, and I don't think she would have made that up. And you know, remember when Gretchen Carlson's lawyer released through Gabe Sherman like a dozen passed, which was hard because half of them were an anonymous person saying, well, in a thing, and some of them I'm like, yeah, I bet he did that, and that doesn't look that bad to me. I mean, giving somebody, you know, certain things were I think stretched, certain things were true, certain things were completely false, but it's hard even now kind of knowing how much do I believe and how much do I not.
Yeah, I had almost no contact with Gretchen. I do know that she was, let's say, not universally popular.
Yeah, everybody who worked with her hated her.
Right. Now the scene that we see in this episode of Roger being essentially hijacked by Gretchen because she wanted to complain about her treatment on the show,
right.
and him turning it around and saying, you know, you're Miss America,
right.
take the upper road, and by the way, Gretchen, give us a twirl.
Right.
And you can see her walking away, clearly stewing and angry and,
right.
and increasingly angry, but then she turns around and does a twirl.
Does the twirl.
So
she capitulated to his power.
Yeah.
John.
So which was it?
Right. Right. I'd heard the twirl thing from other people only after that. Sometimes he would have a gal come in and do an interview. He'd say, "Hey, give me a twirl," type of thing. So I believe that happened. Of course, I talked to other gals who were like, "Well, I'm on camera, and sometimes the camera hits me from all things." I had no problem with that, but I can understand other people saying, "Oh my God, you're sexualizing me."
Like it or not, television is about looks.
Right. Right. And that's one thing that you know, and clearly at Fox News, if you were a better looking person, you had a better chance of being on TV than not. And that was, right. I think Howard Stern called the women superwomen. He's like, they're like models. They're 6 feet tall. They have law degrees, and it, you know, the critics on Fox would be like, oh, they'd hire bimbos and put it on. But it kind of wasn't that. You actually had to be beautiful, and you had to be pretty darn smart, and you had to have, you know, some semblance of fairness that even then didn't exist at other channels.
Yeah, it's easy for critics and Fox haters to call them all bimbos,
right.
as a collective insult. When you look at the individual women who were anchors on Fox News, it's very hard to use that term.
I mean, like even Gretchen Carlson had huge success in life, and again, nobody liked working with her. Doesn't mean she's right or wrong on things, but I mean, she was literally the type of person who would pass a colleague or a guest that she'd had on multiple times in a short hallway, and they'd say, "Oh, hi, Gretchen," and she'd just keep walking like she pretended like she didn't hear people. So, you know, when that first came out and she was the first one to accuse Roger, everybody was like, well, I know who I'm siding with, the guy who is one of the coolest people I know, or this woman who doesn't say hi to people in the hallway. So, again, doesn't mean, it's not proof in a court of law that she's wrong on things, but it certainly explained why the company's reaction and most people's reaction certainly were, except for the Murdoch sons, right. were like, let's look at this before we
the first couple of days after that initial complaint came out from Gretchen's lawyers, it did seem implausible.
Right.
And then of course the evidence built and more people came forward and look, whatever she was, she brought Roger Ailes down.
Right. Right. That's very true. And and her lawyer. Well, I'll get into her lawyer at some other time. But her lawyer is
we'll have time for that. In
is
another
somebody
episode.
who's willing to say things that aren't true. So, all right,
Ken, let's go have a bowl of cereal.
All right, bowl of cereal. If you like this, please click the little bell icon. You'll be notified of the next episode we have on. Please subscribe to the channel. We're having a lot more videos that we're under production with right now, beyond Fox and getting into kind of the media now and the media tomorrow. Thanks for watching. If you like this at all, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the little bell icon, and it'll let you know when the next one of these videos comes up. We're also involved in the comment section, so please ask questions or give your thoughts. We'd be happy to chat with you. Finally, LaCorte News is going to be putting out a lot more videos. We're taking a very critical look at the media because they often lie. And we would love to have you on board with this and giving us your thoughts as we grow this into something real. Thanks.